think he's had, an MVP. I'm sorry, an all-star caliber season. But you still probably need that other scorer who's a perimeter threat and can really take pressure off of Cade. I think that's why people throw around names like Michael Porter Jr., like Trey Murphy, like Laurie Markkinen, because those are all guys who can play the four, where they do have a long-term need with Tobias Harris. Their starter there currently, and I don't think Ron or Asar really slot naturally into the power forward position at this point in their careers. So that's why those names are thrown around. But I kind of compare where the Pistons are to where Orlando and Houston were last year, where they were really good defensively. They were clear-cut playoff teams toward the top of their conferences. And then they get to the playoffs, and you just can't get a bucket when you need one. And when you're going against teams, with multiple guys who can generate that type of offense, puts you at a disadvantage. I think the Pistons saw that in the playoffs against the Knicks, where you have to contend with not just Brunson, but Karl Anthony Towns as well. And for Detroit, if Cade isn't getting it going, you don't really have that next guy that defense is really fear. So long term, that's what you have to address. I think at some point, there's a chance that guy is already on the roster, and that's the advantage of just playing the season out. Is it gives you more info on if that guy is already here, and maybe you don't need to go and make that type of move. Maybe you could just go get a Caruso type or Isaiah Hartenstein type comparing to the Oklahoma City Thunder, because they had Shea obviously, and then Jalen Williams, and I think Chet too have kind of grown into that secondary scoring role. So regardless of how they fill it, I think eventually it will be something that they need to address.
Yeah, which players would you say are untouchable on the roster right now?
Obviously Cade, and then I think of the young guys, I would just be really, really surprised to see Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, and Asar Thompson go anywhere. I think those are the five guys that, on some level, you see them as being core to what this team's trying to do long term, and uh, our guys that I think when their time comes, you probably lean toward trying to retain or match or whatever it is. Asar is your top defender. Isaiah Stewart, what he brings defensively. Ron, I feel like you just have to watch Ron play because his stats don't really speak for the way he could just impact games. Duren and Cade, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. So I would say those five.
One thing I wanted to touch on that you touched there was Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren. Do you think, though, obviously they're not max contract players, but in the era of the punitive, first and second aprons and roster construction, and we're seeing with the Thunder, they paid their top three guys, are all paid near max or max contracts, and the Pistons are good, but they're not in a position where they have three guys who are going to be commanding salaries like that. How do you expect, obviously, with I think Asar and Jalen being the next two guys in commanding a contract extension, how do you think they're going to go about that? Because Jalen Duren seems like he's easily going to be making over $20 million a year, because that's what it goes for top 15 starting centers in the NBA. And then Asar Thompson, additionally, like that's probably what we're looking, Mikal Bridges or other types of wings in that 20 to 25 million annual range. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that's something that's going to have to be a bridge they cross.
Yeah, I think those are both guys that you're going to have to pay some amount of big money. I don't think Asar probably gets a max like with Duren. Maybe there's a team that needs a center that decides he's worth it this summer, but you're probably looking at the $35 million range for Duren at this point, and that could continue to go up as the season goes on. And he's only 22 years old. He's only going to continue to get better and better. So you've just got to love his upside long term. So he's in year 4. He's a restricted free agent this summer. Asar in year 3 will be open for extension eligibility. So that process will begin for him. Asar, as good as he is defensively, I think his offensive limitations do kind of cap that a bit for him. He's just a non-shooter at this stage of his career. He doesn't make a lot of them, and he doesn't really take any of them at all. So I think if you're projecting what other defense first players get, like you're probably looking at closer to, and this is accounting for cap inflation. ballpark. Yeah, I'm not sure if he approaches 30 million when so much of his contribution is purely on defense. But regardless, to the second apron era, those are two guys that you're going to have to commit some sort of money to. And Cade's currently in his 5-year maximum $269 billion extension. So they've got some numbers to crunch here soon.
With Jalen Duren, like in terms of like his minutes are pretty similar from the last couple of years of his career, but like he's really taken a big step. Like, what have you seen? Like, is it mentally, or is maybe someone behind the scenes has been like coaching him up? Like, what have you seen for him to take this drastic step to where he's literally like a max player at this point?
By the
Yeah.
way, his mid-range like breakdown, how he like it is the weirdest thing I've seen from it's amazing, but like how he literally has this like ISO midi game where he'll like take bigs off the dribble. I love it. It's unique.
Yeah, I mean, he's just made a massive leap this season, especially on offense. He's a guy that was drafted at 18 and came into the league more so. I think you see centers come in raw, athletic, super gifted, but just figuring out how to impact the game at that level. And some of it for him is just growing up. Like you go from 18 to 22. That's essentially a whole college career he's had just in the NBA because he was 17 when he had his lone season at Memphis. So you just look at 4 years of development, and I think that's all showing this season. I think you began to see the gear shift for him in the middle of last season. I don't think he started last season very well. I think as the year went on, he got better. And as he got better, so did the Pistons. And I think he played his best basketball last season in the playoffs against the Knicks. I think he was the Pistons' second best player in that series. So he just picked up where he left off this year. Like you mentioned, with his sort of bitty ISO game, that's a wrinkle that, I don't know if you can really project that coming in, because when you have somebody who makes their living off of alley oops and, put back dunks, like transition, high rebounding numbers, coaches aren't always going to say, okay, like I trust you to go and take guys off the dribble and be the lead by handler this possession. But again, that just shows how much he's grown for him to come back with a little bit of a mid-range jumper with a pretty tight handle where he's taking opposing centers off the dribble. You could do a handoff fake, like you could trust him to make the right pass or take it in himself. And he's got like some real patience on his drives too. It's not just him trying to be KD. He'll create room with his shoulder. He's got jab steps. He's got a little bit of a bag there that's been pretty fun to watch. So 22 years old. I mean, you're going to see him continue to get better as he turns 23, 24. I think it just speaks to how young he is. And once the Pistons started to win last season and he started to understand how he could impact games, I think that supercharged this summer, and we're seeing that pay off now.
To talk about Asar, somebody that similar to Jalen, that we obviously knew that he had to grow up, but in his rookie year, he suffered or had the blood clot. And I thought one wrinkle of his game that you mentioned, he stopped shooting, and right before the injury or the blood clot, he was averaging over 3 attempts a game, albeit just below 30%. I think it was like 29, 27%. And every single month since, coming back, he's kind of like taken less and less threes. I think last year he was at like 1.5. This year, he's barely at 1. In that 16 game stretch that before the blood clot, between February and March, before his rookie season end, he was attempting just under 4 threes a night at 27%. So I think it's really weird. Do you think that blood clot maybe hampered his development as offensively? Because he's not progressed. Defensively, he's fantastic, but in comparison to Amen, even as just an offensive creator and all that, a slasher, he's not become a similar player.
Yeah, I mean, when your rookie season's cut off with blood clots and it kind of takes away a summer of development, I think that's going to have a not great effect, obviously, for him to have to withstand that, from his rookie going into his second season, and actually delayed his debut last season. I don't think he started playing until mid-November or so, and then he was on a minute restriction, and it was just a whole process last season to kind of get him back to 100%. So he had a full offseason to work this past offseason. Like you said, he's been great defensively. I think offensively, it's been more of a mixed bag. We saw him pretty confident, I think, with the ball in his hands early in the season. As you know, some players came back, some players emerged, like Dennis Jenkins and Asar began to handle the ball less. I think he just began to attack games differently. Like you mentioned, with the 3-point shooting, he just doesn't really take them anymore. I think some of that's just coaching changes. Going from one coach to another coach, and JB is going to ask Asar to do different things. But I think along with that, his natural disposition is just to not shoot because that's just not one of the strengths in his game. I also do think Amin and Asar were different players coming in. I think Amin's always been seen as having a little bit of a stronger handle, and that was a big reason why a lot of people kind of had him slightly ahead of Asar in that draft because he just had a little bit more on ball juice. I don't know if the blood clot really plays in there. I think some of that's just their difference as players. I think Amin is a bit better offensively because he has that handle, and I think Asar is a bit better defensively. So they're slightly different players, but I would agree overall that the development for Asar on offense probably hasn't progressed as much as you would like to see.
You, you just mentioned about the coaching change and like you being around the team day to day from both eras, from Monty now to JB. What have you noticed the difference in terms of like the culture and kind of like the team chemistry and like from both eras?
Yeah, I think just the energy. I think JB really came in and like galvanized not just the roster but the franchise as a whole. He came in, I think